welcome to another episode on Maven Talks, and this is episode 14. And today we have amongst us Mr. Shoan Shinde. Mr. Shoan is design thinking practitioner and evangelist, having studied and practiced the subject in every aspect and in different formats for nearly a decade and a half now. With a deep understanding of consumer behavior and social psychology, he works as a design thinking consultant to help organizations to facilitate business strategies for building brands, conceptualizing go to market campaigns, catalyzing innovation in product development, and implementing digital transformation. We welcome you, sir. And yeah, you are live now.
Thanks, Rakshit. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, so how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Okay.
So let's begin with a brief introduction of yours. Can you share about your education and your present job role?
Okay. That was a very humbling introduction by you to start with. But with respect to my education, right? I mean, I started my piece as an engineer, although I never pursued this stream full time. Later on, after a couple of job stints, I pursued my master's. That's when I went to ISB. This was around 7, 8 years ago. And presently, after that, again, a couple of stints, including my own agency. Presently, I head marketing for an HR tech company. It's a company called Turbo Hire. So we are in the it's an applicant tracking system. It's in the space of talent intelligence. So yeah.
Okay, and in order to give just a basic idea to the audience who haven't ever heard of what design thinking is, can you explain it in layman terms in just a few words?
Okay. In a few words, okay, to put it very precisely, design thinking is a user-centered problem-solving approach, right? That's the long and short of it. Um, to understand it in more detail, right? Now there are probably a gazillion different formats of how people are implementing it as a process. Lots of material available on the internet. A lot of people have done research around it, the method, the process, so on and so forth. Um, but the reason I refer to it in its simplest form, because I truly believe that somewhere at the end of it, it's simply a way of being. It's a way of life. Taking any problem, systematically breaking it down into smaller parts and solving for them. Having a growth mindset at its core is what really constitutes design thinking. The willingness to learn, the willingness to unlearn and learn again. It's not about risk taking or failure, but the appetite of wanting to grow. And I think that's where kind of design thinking stems out of. Um, Innovation is a byproduct. A lot of people get into design thinking thinking that, oh, we want to be innovative in nature, or we want to do something cool and new. Like I've always told people, and I've always advocated that innovation is not your goal. Innovation is an outcome of what you do. You kind of set out to solve a problem using design thinking, and that's what it must be. And innovation tends to be very often than not a solution that arises. Another aspect that I really like about the subject, right, and is that it helps people work together better, because unlike traditional formats of getting about work or business, um, it doesn't function in silos. It inherently involves all the stakeholders concerned with it. And when I say all, it's not just when I say users, for example, it's not just the consumption side of things, or the customer, the consumer, but it also involves people who are involved in the creation of the solution at the same time. So when you actually think from both perspectives, it helps people work a lot better. It is a lot of new ideas that get thrashed around, and like I said, innovation is an outcome then.
Okay, that was amazing. And what made design thinking so interesting that you thought this is something I want to do for the rest of my life, given you have been practicing it for almost 15 years now?
Um, I think, okay, a couple of things, right? One, that I think it somewhere very closely aligns with a very strong personal belief of lifelong learning. The subject inherently requires one to be able to do that, to never accept that. And I personally, I don't think that anyone could ever reach a point where they say that, okay, I've learned enough, I've learned everything, and there's nothing more to learn. There is always something new to learn. And this continuous journey of upskilling, getting better at what you do, and is somewhere what really kind of got me to design thinking. Being able to work with people, understanding people, I think that's where a big part of my alignment comes from. Is I like observing people, understanding people, And like I tell people, right, marketing and branding, that what I do otherwise as a profession, is an outcome of who I am as a person. So just this piece, I think that's where I get strongest, with DD.
Okay, and like how has design thinking made a difference in terms of uh, how companies operate today? Because it has been there for quite some time now, but in the last decade it has been blossoming. So what differences had it made in terms of companies operating or the way they are structured?
So actually, the fact that you mentioned that it's been around for a while, right? I think it dates back to around the 50s or the 70s. That's a really long time that it's been around. But yes, it blossomed over the last decade. It came a little more into recognition around 15 odd years ago, 22 decades ago, thanks to Apple very strongly advocating it, aligning it with their brand, and becoming who they became, right? That's where people actually grow closer in start exploring design thinking in that sense. How it has helped businesses, and I will go back to what I was mentioning it in the context of how design thinking requires two things, right? One is the entire growth mindset piece, and the second is the entire aspect of innovation. Um, to be able and uses multiple stakeholders. Now, when you talk about putting multiple people from different streams, consumption side, solution development side, all of them into one room, and you try to brainstorm together. Now, this is typically not how businesses work. Businesses function teams as much as they like to believe. Uh, Teams tended to function in silos. Typically, orders or ideas or strategy was always a top down approach. It wasn't inclusive in nature. The last 2 decades or so, which also saw the rise of a bunch of tech giants around the world who advocated very strongly an open culture, a flatter organization as opposed to a hierarchical corporate tech structure. So, which meant that people worked better together. It meant there was organizations were also now being taken into account. See, for a long time, and in fact till today, for companies, it's the business first. They always thought from a business's point of view. No one really thought from an organization standpoint. But because of this, because as people started working better together, organizations became flatter. This entire piece of teamwork, actually real teamwork, and I'm not talking about just activities that happened over weekends in the name of making teams work better together, but actually when on a day-to-day basis, when they thrash ideas together around, all of this is where organizations actually came to the fore. Companies became more cognizant of who worked in their teams, how they functioned, how did they work with one another, and so on and so forth. So there was this entire development that happened within companies. Culture is something that actually became deeply rooted in how a company got about things that it did. So this is the entire one aspect of it. And I go back to what I mentioned earlier, the entire piece on innovation, or coming up with newer ideas, that inevitably was an outcome. So again, if you trace back to the last 2 decades, especially these companies who have had think tanks inside, be it the likes of the Googles of the world, they have very strongly not only advocated this entire piece on of innovation. I think they kind of live breathe it, but to a large extent it has also been about challenging status quo. Thus that a solution that, because it did not exist in the past, does not mean it can't exist tomorrow. And I think the number of innovations that we've seen across the board in the last 2 decades has been phenomenal purely because of this.
Yeah, that's amazing. And if we take a step back to your early years, was thinking something you knew about while ago while you were doing your BTech in electronics? So basically, when did you hear about it for the first time?
Oh, definitely not during BTech. Um, so, like I said, it's been around for a while. It's unfortunate that we didn't know about it, or we were not even taught about it. It's very heartening to see. In fact, now educational institutes actually teaching the subject as part of their curriculum, including in India. But my background to DD so goes back to my time. As I mentioned, I did my master's at ISB, right? And after that, I had my own agency for 3 years. It was a creative agency, and as part of that, one of the projects that I was doing with one of my customers, um, in one of our chats, he mentioned to me that the way I work, with him, with my team, everything, the way I work, that the world outside nowadays is referring to this as design thinking, and this is 2015, early 2015, if I remember correctly. And I was like, "Acha, very interesting. The term is interesting. I'll check it out." So I did check it out. Um, I read about it and I realized that A, yes, that's actually who I was. That's what I just did, right? And it was a way of life. B, it was just super exciting. It was just that, oh, you can do so much more with it. That I could actually leverage this way of being to not just facilitate or help the projects that I was, but help them explore newer directions. And at the same time, from my career point of view, also help me align a more strategic direction of how I wanted to see it kind of playing out. Right, so 2015 is when it started. Did a bunch of courses. I think pretty much I exhausted all the courses that were available on the internet. Again, unfortunately, there aren't any proper academic courses built around it. There are a lot of shorter courses, but nothing full time. Um, Exhausted whatever I could on that. After that, I moved in the direction. I went to the what, and again, I mean, I kind of looked at it from inward and why I liked the whole design thinking piece, and it goes to what I mentioned, the whole observing people, right? Understanding people is really what really drives me. So I studied a bit of social psychology at the same time, studied consumer behavior at the same time, just so that um, if I take a step back from design thinking itself, I mean, I get a better sense of how to apply the process if you really know the user in and out, right? So that's been the journey so far.
So it was something that I guess came naturally to you, and you just practiced and got better at it.
I
So
would like to think so.
it was like authentic to you, and like I have seen your LinkedIn. So when you said that you pretty much exhausted all your courses, I get that, because I guess there were around 15, 20, or even more courses. I
Yeah,
didn't even knew that that much courses around design thinking even exist.
yeah. My credit card also knows that. Yeah,
Yeah. So you did your post graduation in management, as you mentioned, from Indian School of Business, which is like one of the premier institutions of our country. Going for a post grad was always like a goal that you had already set, or did you figure it out later on, maybe after doing your graduation?
well, that's a funny part. Now, um, I always knew that I wanted to do my master's and I wanted to do an MBA. Ironically, I knew this when I was in junior college. It's kind of absurd, to be very honest. My So at that point, I think I was 16. I was in junior college in Bombay, Maharashtra. We call it junior college, right? The rest of the country calls it high school, 11, 12, basically. So that's when I had read a couple of books, two books. I mean, I'm an avid reader, but there are these two things that I believe um, shaped my mindset and how I wanted my career to play out. One of them was The Fountainhead by Ian Rand, and the other one was Cain and Abel by Jeffrey Archer. Um, Funnily, I did not associate with actually the main lead protagonist. I associated with the alter protagonist, the negative character. More so, it wasn't about associated. It was actually more about who they were in those books, in those stories, and I wanted to be those characters. Um, and I don't know. I was very interested in the whole piece of investment banking. I have done a couple of courses with the Bombay Stock Exchange to kind of get my fundamentals sorted and actually learn about mergers and acquisitions. And I was 16 at that point, and I really wanted to do it. So thanks. I mean, so also, my given the family business that's there, right? My mother's business, the network that she had and the role that she was in, there were a couple of people who were customers or clients to our company, and they were investment bankers, very senior people at places like Deutsche Bank and DSP Merrill Lynch back then. So had the privilege of having candid conversations with them on what should one do to become an investment banker. First of all, they were like, "You're 16, chill." Second, if you have to go down that path, most people who actually go down that path um, go down an engineering MBA route. Okay, so this was set in stone. I was like, "Okay, I'm in my 11, 12. I will go down engineering MBA route." So I started my engineering MBA route, and I think it was in my first sem itself of engineering. I was like, "Oh shit, I don't want to do this." But I still went through my engineering, of course, and being a fairly decent, I mean, as modestly I can put it, fairly decent with academics, I think um, engineering played out well. But I got associated with other my family business closer at that point. It's in the art industry, so it's super different from engineering, right? My dad's also an artist, and that whole context are growing up, dinner table conversations were very different. Let me put it that way. And given that entire exposure, right, it's a very different world, the art industry. At the same time, engineering, at the same time, where I've grown up, the books I've read, all of that. I think all of this kind of culminated somewhere in definitely that okay, engineering is not what I want to do. Um, I did graduate undergrad decently, and I didn't sit for placement because I knew I didn't want to sit work for a typical tech company. It's not that it's a bad thing. It's just that I knew I didn't want to do it. Of course, a lot of peers were quite aghast that how can you not sit for placements, but okay, I didn't. And again, part of the network that we came from, people that we knew, there was an artist who was looking for a studio manager at that point. Again, how I met him was just ironic that he was so I follow football, right, and I was following a particular club, and he was also very seriously into Indian football and football in general, and he was doing an entire series, a body of work on football. That's why we connected. I went to his studio to check out his work, and he in conversation was like, will I'm looking out for a studio manager, do you know somebody? I was like, "Chal, I'll only do it." So that I started a career path in a completely different area. That was the next 2.5 years. Then I also was part of the founding team of the Kochi Benal Foundation. So after I exhausted that entire piece, I thought that I was also associated with the family business back home. I was working with my mother, and I realized that I want to give more time there. I want to work with the business, and I started, a couple of years I was there as well. And it's during that course that I realized that um, maybe that entire thought about an MBA, if I did have it. In fact, at that point, I had actually considered two courses because it was in the art industry. I'd considered a master's in museology, and I'd also considered a master's in business. I think just keeping the wider scope that an MBA opens up, right, as opposed to museology, was very limited in nature. I went down the MBA route, of course. I applied to just two colleges. One college I was very sure of. The second was more about schools. The second one I was more about, it was trying to assess my own capabilities. I did get a shortlist from there, which I did not choose to go down. No regrets on that ever. But yeah, and the other school was ISB, of course, that I joined in 2013.
Yeah, like when you said that you didn't sit for the placements, that pretty much is what I'm experiencing now because, like you said, I have been decent at academics, but the thing is that I can't see on me on that route of maybe working in an IT company, and that's the reason I'm actually considering management courses. Like unlike that, I'm setting for placements, but out of say 12 or 13 roles that I have seen up till now, I just applied maybe for one or two of them because they
Hmm.
were somehow related to management or maybe down that path. They related to it or aligned with it. So let's talk about your experience at Indian School of Business. Like first of all, it's I the first time I heard about it, like it's obviously a premier college, but the thought that made me feel that yeah, this is something I'd like to to some days when I heard that the co-founder of Nearby, Mr. Ankur Warek, who basically came from Indian School of Business. So, how did it help you in shaping you into what you are today, and how was your experience there?
Right. Um, I think the 1 year at ISB is a lifetime within itself, and that would be an understatement. Um, So, and I won't, so ISB was transformative, truly transformative. And I'm not talking about the ACADS or the fact that some stellar faculty and all of that. There's a reason why it's a tier one school, right? It's got all of that. Um, I think what really stood out for me at ISB and continues to are the people who go to that school. And it's not because I went there. It's because the reason I went there is because of this, right? I I'm also friends with a lot of guys who have graduated from across B schools, some of the best schools in the country, known to be the best. But I think what the ISB alumni offers, right, what it brings to the table, how well and close knit it is, how it stands up for any alumnus at any point of time. We are over 11,000 people around the world right now. And I don't think there's any one of these 11,000 who ever feels that they don't belong. So there is this very strong connect, and I think this is something that will hopefully, touch wood, hold true for the school as time comes. This is something that has always been about grade B schools, right? They have stood the test of time is purely because of the people that what they go on to achieve in life, but still remain a proud alumni. So that's something I think ISB right from day one. In fact, as part of our orientation by the dean, this is something he spoke about, and I think that stuck with me. Of course, the people that you study with is a great experience. Like, people ask me what was that 1 year like, aside from the fact that it was like a lifetime. I think ISB was a very humbling experience. And the reason I say it's humbling is because we all went into ISB good at what we do. Everyone in their respective walks of life must have been a rock star. But the moment you enter a school full of rock stars, no one is a rock star anymore. And you suddenly realize that there's a bigger world out there. There's so much more one can do and learn from other people, right? So being surrounded by that entire cohort, this what we refer to as peer learning, is not just about a classroom discussion. It's a mindset that you kind of inherit from the people around you. So I think this was a big contributing factor of ISB for me.
Yeah, like you said, it's like one of the tier one colleges, and things like good education already come inherent in it, and maybe its alumni background is so huge that it stands for itself. So, while you were doing your like engineering, and you did your engineering in electronics, so it was something that lies on a completely technical side, and on the other hand, management or marketing or other like finance lies on something that's seen as completely non-technical. So, how did you know that it's the right thing to do? Because like you had experience working in electronics, so I always get this from my parents too, because I'm going for a management side, but it's still unexplored. Because even back when I wanted to do engineering, I was pretty much confident that okay, I wanted to do engineering for so and so reasons. And when I came to college, I feel that engineering is not my cup of tea, and I want to go for management for so and so reasons. So what was your thought process, or what made you confident enough that I don't want to work in electronics or IT, and maybe move to the management side?
Um, I think the confidence came from the fact that I did not see happiness in it. It wasn't that I wasn't good at it. CADs were never a problem. Um, I could not see myself. Again, no offense to the people who can do phenomenal coding in the world, but I can't. Right? I couldn't see myself going down that path. Yes, I am. My undergraduation was in electronics, um, and all of that happened. Right? But I definitely knew I did not want to. I think also a big contributing factor, to be very honest, was the fact that I had this entire um, exposure on the other hand, right? Thanks to turmeric, or thanks to the art industry, my parents, and all of that. So this opened up an entire new avenue, that there is a whole life outside of engineering, and that's something that I could actually pursue. Interestingly, I was associated with design right from the beginning. And when I say design, I started off graphic design. I'm pretty much a self-taught person. It started just kind of helping out again with publication design, catalogs, and brochures for the family business, the art exhibitions it did and stuff. um, People liked what they saw and actually got more projects. And I started as an independent designer back in 2006. And that continued pretty much right through the next couple of jobs. I did design because that made me happy. So when I say I didn't do in electronics, I didn't take up engineering as a career stream, didn't make me happy, is because design made me happy. So I had a benchmark. I could compare what actually makes me happy. So I think that that was definitely one of the reasons, and I was quite clear that I'm not doing engineering.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you have a ton of experience in sharing your knowledge, whether you are a mentor or a guest lecturer for a lot of organizations. So what made you feel that I not only want to put in like the most of work while working on projects, etc. in it, but I also want to share it with students out there, because that's completely different side. Being good at something, like practicing it on your own projects and maybe sharing it out with the world.
I think you partly answered it right. It's probably a personal belief, but you can be truly good at something the day you can teach it to someone else, right? Otherwise, we are just good A on paper or in our own head. The day someone else thinks you are good enough that you can upskill them is when you're actually good at it and you're getting recognized in the right way. So for me, I think there are a couple of reasons why I went down that path, and I do enjoy it, right? I mean, the reason I enjoy it is, so one, it to be relevant, and to be able to make a difference in someone else's life or teach them something. And when I say teach, it's not necessarily academia, right? It's just overall as a trait of teaching something or a coaching piece. The fact that you can bring about that 1% improvement in someone else's life um, requires you to be that good. So you have to be in this perpetual journey of, again, growing and learning, the piece that I mentioned earlier, right, about the whole lifelong learning bit. So it aligned very strongly over there with me, that you have to always keep upskilling and staying relevant to it. The second part was that, and I truly have this, that um, I personally don't think there's any profession in the world that's more noble than being able to teach, than being a teacher, right? The fact that what you can do in someone else's life, the change that you can bring about in someone else's life, and the content that you get in seeing that, even that 1% improvement, I don't think anything in the world can trump that content, because otherwise we pretty much live life for ourselves, right? It's that one moment that you're actually making that change for someone else, and I think that's what really is at the end of it. I mean, I do it. I work as a career coach, pro bono with a bunch of places, all of that alongside work, and you still take out time to do it. A lot of people wonder how. The question is, when you have the why right, I don't think the how matters, honestly.
Yeah, and at the initial stages, like how did mentoring students basically look like? For example, I have been working as like IoT, like robotics and IoT instructor. Just one second. Yeah. Uh, yeah. I guess my video is freezed. Yeah. Yeah, now it's better. So basically, like I said, I have been working as an IoT instructor for one of the organizations, and when I had to when I had to give them a sort of training, so I realized that while defining, say, what IoT or anything like that is, I was using a lot of fancy jargon. So basically, you are defining something and you are using 2 to 3 words that people don't definitely know about. So it's all about putting it into simplest terms, and you struggle a lot in the beginning. I actually spent 3 hours or 4 hours before taking that training, uh, taking that 4 hour training for a day. And it was pretty much difficult in the beginning because we tend to define things with fancy jargons, and if a person who is hearing for the first time might not have any idea about it. So was like, did you have any struggle or roadblocks in the beginning, or did you feel that like this is pretty much in my alley and I can do that very easily?
No, initially definitely it wasn't in my alley. I think I discovered what was in my alley much later, or you actually kind of develop that comfort zone around yourself, right? But definitely, what you went through initially, a lot of jargon, what people don't kind of forget. I think somewhere we use jargon, and so no offense to you, but I think somewhere we use jargon early on because it makes us seem intelligent. Right, we suddenly become more profound and credible the moment we use jargon. There's a reason certain professions of the world use a lot of jargon and technical knowledge, is because it makes them look better and sound better. But yeah, the couple of initial sessions were about this. Uh, People asked me, "What do you really mean?" And that's when I realized that, I think I just need to kind of unwrap the word and explain what it really means. Maybe that's one of the reasons that it was subsequently followed by a bunch of other guest lecture stints and all of that. But yeah, I mean, it initial challenges definitely are there, as long as you're willing to take the feedback, learn from it, get on, and go on with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have had like a ton of experience while, if I'm even talking about working in startups or corporates. So in terms of fostering innovation, like which side has been your favorite and why?
Oh, startups, hands down. I don't think there is. It's not even a debate. Startups, hands down. Yeah.
Yeah, and like in obviously in terms of maybe stability or monetary benefits, corporate tend to weigh higher as compared to startups. So what were the pros and cons, according to you, in working in a startup as compared to working at an established company or a corporate?
Okay. Now, actually, that's an interesting question because I do get this a lot from my mentees. Is that if you're getting a better job, why can't we just take it? There's the stability associated with it, and that's fair. Uh, to be very honest, there is no right and wrong. There's nothing to say that you should be pursuing a startup versus or join a startup rather than joining a larger company. I think somewhere it really comes down to what one wants in life. If someone needs it for whatever be the reason, be it household requirement, be it their personal goals, the fact that they want to own a house by a certain age, see themselves settled, whatever it is, right? If there's stability required, that's cool. It's their choice. In my case, I know, or people like me for a fact, I think there is this need for of challenge status quo, right? It's something that or a hunger that I think only a startup A can meet, because you never wear one hat in a startup. You're wearing multiple hats. You are it's not asked of you, but somewhere that if you do that, it's going to help just not just you, but the larger organization in the picture, right? So I think that's a big, very fun part about a startup, the fact that you can do this. And there is so much more agility, right? And you are surrounded purely by like-minded people who are willing to do that extra mile to do what they want to do or why they're even there in the first place. And I think just that, right? I mean, again, who I am as a person, you kind of thrive around in a neighborhood, in an environment like that, as opposed to a larger organization. And again, they are the way they are for good measure and reason. But the silo piece really doesn't work for me. That's not who I am, right? I need that involvement with people, engagement, um, also someone and people who would challenge me, because I think until that happens, people tend to slide back into complacency, right? And there's a reason why startups have been on a such faster growth curve compared to larger organizations. It kind of stems from this because people are hungry for more. It's just that.
Yeah, I guess like one more factors that fairly accounts for why people are maybe moving more towards startup than corporates is that uh, if we talk about say our grandfathers, uh, they basically, the basic need for them was to get enough money so they could survive. When it came to our parents, it was more of that, along with along with needs, we also have to fill that section of wants where, like, we need this thing but we also want to have maybe this type of lifestyle or something like that. And when it comes to us, it's basically that we are also maybe finding a purpose apart from having that monetary benefits while working in a job. Because like someone said to me in previous episodes only, that while you are working in a big company, say Amazon, you are like working in a big company in one office of that, in that to just one floor and that to just one room. So your effort might just affect one click of that whole website. So I guess people do feel like they want to create a difference. I guess that's why they try to shift to the startup scenario as well, because you can pretty much see everything you are doing uh, in front of you. Because if you are a designer in a startup, you might be the one handling everything from the website to the posters, and it would be pretty much your work that gets out. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
any advice for young thinkers out there that you wish maybe, like, that you wish maybe someone gave you when you started making your way into the field of design thinking?
One thing, I think, definitely stay curious. The world is full of answers. It's just about a asking the right questions. But I think before that, also having the willingness to ask the right questions and having the willingness to accept answers in whatever form they might come. We as a species um, tend to shelter ourselves in our own beliefs and like to stay in our comfort zone. We don't want our life disrupted, so we choose to hear and believe in things that align with our own agendas. But having this willingness to that, okay, what I hear might not be what I am hoping for, but still taking it as good feedback, learning from it, and going one step further. This part of what might lie ahead, right? This entire piece of curiousness. I think just stay curious. Life will sort itself out.
Yeah.
And I think also, I think that people take too much stress about it. Yeah. I mean, um, we kind of believe that we can influence the way the world goes around, or we our life's problems are so. But the fact I believe is the fact of the matter is that the world existed before us and will exist after us. By us being there, the world is not changing. So there's only that much one can really influence in your immediate circle, and just that. Keep it simple.
Well, that was all from my side. Anything that you'd like to add at the end?
It was wonderful chat. I just hope it was hopeful and useful for people, who had to listen to this. It was great being actually for the first time. I feel like I'm on the other side of the mic, although I'm getting behind the mic in a podcast after a while. And thank you for this. I think this has somewhere sparked that. Oh, why am I not doing podcasts all over again? It's been a while that I'm doing this, and I'm probably going to take it back to my team and like we should start podcasts again. Although we have been planning to, it's just that you need that kick. I think I got that kick. Thank you.
Yeah, like thank you very much for joining, because it was really a pleasing experience that like you took that time out and joined us today, and your stories were like pretty much amazing. I really loved the conversation.
Thank
So
you.
yeah.
Thanks, Rakshit.
Yeah, so let's say goodbye to the audience. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I hope this was
Thank you.
useful. Thank you.